This presentation is about an example for artifact evaluation. We will go back to the previous case of an interesting quest given and discuss the process for evaluating it. Okay, here is again a diagram for the various activities in design research, the main activities. Where we are now is at evaluate artifact. And what we have already done here is that we have explicated the problem, we have made it more precise, we have identified the root causes, and so on. We have also identified various requirements on this quest giver. And for now, we also assume that we have actually developed a new quest giver and have implemented it. So our task now is to evaluate this artifact, this quest giver, and find out how good it actually is. When we carry out evaluation, we need to start from the problems and from the requirements. And we check to what extent the original problem and the explicated problem have been addressed, and also to what extent the requirements have been fulfilled. So this slide now shows the explicated problem. We started from the problem that players don't complete their quests. We looked into root causes, quests are boring and players are not motivated. And based on that, we decided that a solution could be a new artifact, an interesting quest giver, and we found some useful requirements for that. Cool looks, a choice between quests, and a meaningful storyline, and probably many more requirements also. So starting from these problems and these requirements, we go on and carry out our evaluation. The overall question to answer in an evaluation is about how well the artifact actually solves the explicated problem, and to what extent does it fulfill the requirements. And the process for answering this question is shown in this slide, and there are three main activities. It's about analyzing the evaluation context, about selecting evaluation goals and strategies and also research methods, and finally about actually carrying out the evaluation. And in the following, we will see what this means for the interesting quest giver case. Analyzing the evaluation context is about investigating the environment of the evaluation and describing it as a basis for the future selection of evaluation strategies and research methods. Okay. To analyze the evaluation context is a very practical matter. The starting point is that you will never have all of the resources you would like to have when you are to carry out an evaluation. There will always be many different constraints in your environment, and these constraints can be in different dimensions. There may be a lack of time, not sufficient budget, not sufficiently many people or researchers to carry out the evaluation, the competence might be lacking, and you may not have access to users and organizations. And to be clear on all these points is important in order to be able to choose the right strategies in later parts of the evaluation. Okay, if we continue our case here on the quest giver, and we assume here that we're going to analyze the evaluation context, and it is for a master thesis where two students work together. In total, then, these students will have 40 weeks for the entire work, but we assume here that for the evaluation part, they can put in 4 weeks. There is no specific budget, no special money here. The only available resource is the time of the students. And okay, there are 2 students working on this, and they have a competence in the sense that they are strong on theory, they have good basic background knowledge, but they have limited practical experience. When it comes to access to users and organizations, they only have access to fellow students. They have no access to a gaming company or experienced players, say. And of course, there are also other constraints. And being aware of these different constraints, it's important in order to select appropriate evaluation strategies and appropriate research methods. After having analyzed the evaluation context, we are ready to select goals for the evaluation and also strategies. And these strategies are both evaluation strategies and research strategies, as well as research methods. There are many different possible goals for an evaluation. But in our case, we should keep in mind there are only 4 weeks' time in total and only 2 students. So we can't really go for all the different goals. Instead, we only select the 2 basic goals, namely to check if the artifact solves the problem and if the artifact fulfills the requirements. For example, we don't care about comparing the artifact, the quest giver to similar ones, and we don't investigate any side effects. Finally, we also choose to carry out a summative evaluation, meaning that this is really done at the very final stage of the project. We have a completed quest giver, and we want to assess how well it really works. Selecting evaluation strategies means to choose between ex ante and ex post, and choosing between naturalistic and artificial evaluation. In this case, we already have a completed quest given that we can actually put into use, so it seems natural here to choose an ex post evaluation strategy. And let us suppose that we also would like to have a naturalistic strategy. Then we would be in the top corner here to the right. And it would be natural, for example, to choose a case study. We could also go for action research or ethnography and so on. And there are also other alternatives here not shown. But case studies are very common if you go for ex post and naturalistic. There are good arguments for choosing a case study, because they are good for summative evaluations. You can achieve high external validity because you're testing it out in a real environment, a realistic environment. But there are disadvantages also. There's a high cost in terms of time. A real case study might take a lot of time, and you might also want to study players for an extended period of time. And really, to have a realistic and good case study, you shouldn't let anyone be playing this game with the new quest giver. Instead, you should really use experienced players, so you need access to them. And these 2 last items are clearly problematic given what we know from our evaluation context analysis. We didn't have much time, and we only had access to fellow students, not real players. One alternative here would be to still choose ex post as an evaluation strategy, but move from naturalistic to artificial. Here there are also different possibilities for the research methods. You could have a computer simulation, a lab experiment, a field experiment. What seems most appropriate here would be a lab experiment. And there are clearly advantages there. First, a lab experiment can be carried out in a few hours' time, so it's a low cost in terms of time, and you don't necessarily need to have experienced players. It might work out well just with some students. But of course, there are disadvantages. Your final results might not be as reliable, and you might not be able to address all of the different problems and requirements in a good way. And furthermore, the external validity may suffer That is, it might be difficult to generalize or transfer the result to other situations because what you are looking at is not real players playing in a real environment, but some fake players that are working in a very artificial environment in this lab experiment. But let us anyway assume here that what we do is that we choose this lab experiment and we continue on that. To design an evaluation means to decide about a lot of different details, often on quite a nitty-gritty level, and also to prepare a lot of different things, be they large or small. So here, for example, you need to decide how to recruit the subjects for the experiment, how to find the right students for it, then setting up the laboratory environment, to install the software and computers, to find an appropriate room and prepare it. If we assume that the students should be interviewed, you need to prepare by formulating your interview questions, and you should choose software for data analysis when you have received answers to the questions, and so on and so on. All the small details that are needed in order to actually perform the evaluation. When you have designed the evaluation, you can start to perform it. In this case, it means that you should recruit subjects, recruit the different students. You should inform them about this experiment, and when you do this, you should take ethical aspects into account. Then you can start the experiment and you monitor it and you observe the subjects during the experiment. And then after the subjects have played for some time, you interview them about their playing. You transcribe the responses that they give you. You analyze all those transcribed responses and you draw conclusions. And you will carry out many other things also.